All right, y'all. So we have a new bipartisan gun reform bill that a framework was just agreed to in the Senate. So I'm going to break this down for you. Now, understand something. When they say a framework was agreed to, that means that all the details are not ironed out yet. And there's going to be some more give and take, some more push and pull, some more negotiation. And ultimately, this could totally flame out. But at least as of right now, they have a framework to a deal that I'll break down for you. Now, understand that the House of Representatives just passed a piece of legislation. Recently, we covered that on the show. That legislation is considered DOA in the Senate. It's dead on arrival. So that legislation had some more provisions, some more teeth. It had different provisions. This one is even more of a Senate-like bill, which is to say, significantly weaker. So having said all that, let's dive into it. Chris Murphy was involved in these negotiations, and he said the following, on Twitter: "News, we have a deal. Today, a bipartisan group of 20 senators, 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans, is announcing a breakthrough agreement on gun violence, the first in 30 years, that will save lives. I think you'll be surprised at the scope of our framework. Here's what it includes. Major funding to help states pass and implement crisis intervention orders, that's red flag laws, that will allow law enforcement to temporarily take dangerous weapons away from people who pose a danger to others or themselves." Now, let me pause and let's talk about this one for a second here. The wording of this is very Weasley, which tells me, again, this provision doesn't have much teeth. They're not saying we will have a national red flag law. They're saying they're going to give major funding to help states pass and implement red flag laws. So in other words, they're just going to throw some money at the states with the hopes that they'll then turn around and use that money to do a red flag law. And ultimately, where will that money end up? Well, as Chris Murphy just explained, it will end up with law enforcement right here. Law enforcement. Okay, so far, not great, because we're talking about, again, maybe we'll do red flag laws state by state if we give you a whole bunch of money. Then we have billions in new funding for mental health and school safety, including money for the national build-out of community mental health clinics. Now, if that part is true, I completely support it. I do have a hard time believing, though, that we're going to have, universal mental health care, because we don't even have universal healthcare. So, hey, if I'm wrong, I'd be the happiest man on the planet, but color me skeptical. I tend to doubt it. Close the boyfriend loophole so that no domestic abuser, a spouse, or a dangerous dating partner can buy a gun if they are convicted of abuse against their partner. That's obviously good. First ever federal law against gun trafficking and straw purchasing. This will be a difference-making tool to stop the flow of illegal guns into cities. Enhance background checks for under 21 gun buyers and a short pause to conduct the check. Young buyers can get the gun only after the enhanced check is complete. So, if they're saying enhanced checks for people under 21, that means it's still legal in some states for 18 to 21-year-olds to get guns, and that also means the background checks are not universal in nature and not more stringent in nature for everybody. Then he says, clarification on the laws regarding who needs to register as a licensed gun dealer to make sure all truly commercial sellers are doing background checks. Will this bill do everything we need to end our nation's gun violence epidemic? No. But it's real, meaningful progress, and it breaks down a 30-year logjam, demonstrating that Democrats and Republicans can work together in a way that truly saves lives. And then he basically tags everybody who's involved in the negotiations. We have John Cornyn, Kyrsten Sinema, Tom Tillis, Senator Toomey, Manchin, Blumenthal, Collins, Graham, Coons, Heinrich, and Bill Cassidy. And he says, drafting this law and passing it through both chambers will not be easy. We have a long way to go before this gets to the president's desk, but with your help and activism, we can get this done. This time, failure cannot be an option. So, that's what's in the legislation. As you can see, the prediction that I made about this turned out to be totally correct. Because again, this is just the framework. This isn't the final thing. But even if this was the final thing, it's exactly what I told you, which is they'll do some tweaks around the edges. They're very, very minimal, and then they'll declare victory. And then what would happen is, the next time there's a mass shooting, they would all say, look, there's nothing we could do. We already had a bill. And the right would say, see, gun control doesn't even work because you did gun control and now they're still shooting. So, aha, we were right all along. That's the way this is probably going to unfold. Now, let me tell you what is not in the bill, because I think this is just as important, if not more important. This is in Common Dreams here. They say, there's no ban on semi-automatic weapons. There's no ban on high-capacity magazines. The House version of the bill, it's a different gun control bill, but that House version did have a ban on high-capacity magazines. The Senate version, of course, does not. No 21 minimum age to buy AR-15 style rifles, no universal background checks, no safe storage rules at homes, no requiring background checks on internet sales and at gun shows, no banning family members purchasing weapons for their kids. So this is what did not make it into the bill, and as you can see in this article here, they say, bipartisan Senate deal on guns deemed pathetically weak. Quote, this bill's a joke. This makes it sound like mental health is the cause for gun violence. It's the fucking guns. Okay, so there you go. Now, what's likely to happen now is you will have more negotiation, more back and forth. Even the provisions of this already watered down bill will get more and more watered down. Then they'll try to pass it. It may or may not pass. And then if it does pass, I think the House of Representatives would also pass it. I think that, everybody who's nominally on the left would say, look, if this is the best we're going to get, then this is fine. But here's what nobody's telling you. Nobody's telling you that the Democrats could... They don't even need to eliminate the filibuster, which would be awesome, because then 51 votes would win for whatever. They could just make an exception to the filibuster on this issue and pass better gun reform with 51 votes. Now, of course, in that instance, you run into the brick wall of Manchin and Sinema, and so whatever you would pass would have to get through them. But you could definitely get more through them than you can with trying desperately to get 10 Republicans on board. So even though you would still have probably a relatively weak law, you would have a law that's much stronger than this framework, which is going to get watered down even further. So yet again, this is another example of Democrats, even as they hold the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the presidency, they're really not going to get anything serious done. And like I said, even if this does get completed and does become law, the next time there's a shooting, Republicans are going to turn around and say, see, gun control didn't work. We did gun control and it didn't work. And it also takes the wind out of the sails of the movement. Now, understand something, guys. This is an issue where I would be willing to compromise, but it would need to be better than this, especially since this is also going to get watered down more. Even if the compromise was literally just a national red flag law, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. All right, what are you going to do? But really, ultimately, the thing that keeps bugging me is this notion that they never find a path to get real change. And what you could do is do an exception to the filibuster on the issue of gun reform, pass a decent law with 51 votes, and it's not even in the conversation. Nobody's talking about it. And so we're going to have what happens on most issues happen with this. And even if they do get this through, they'll pat themselves on the back and act like, they did, an amazing job here. When the fact of the matter is, even if this law passes as it is, which it won't, because there's still a negotiation going on, you'd reduce the number of gun deaths from 39,000 to 37,500. Which, look, 37,500 is better than 39,000 gun deaths, of course, but I think you could do a little better than that. And I don't want this to be another example of people realizing that our government is totally corrupt and useless and pathetic, but it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. So we'll have to wait and see. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You want to.